So Lindsay, consumer behavior has shifted to consuming content across multiple devices in lots of different places and lots of different formats. That also means that media owners need to be prepared to monetize that content across devices, whichever format, whichever location. What are some of the biggest challenges that Operative is trying to solve for media sellers in this vein?
That's right. So we know that audiences are shifting constantly and that the landscape for how you deliver content to those audiences is constantly changing, right? We're seeing this now with the rise of fast channels and the need to take massive content libraries and determine the best way to sort of utilize them across all of the different distribution channels that you have available. So one of the things that Operative is solving for with our AOS platform is really the ability for you as a media owner to look across your linear, your local, and your digital properties and to be able to understand sort of how you can distribute a single deal into all of those different channels when you are sort of doing a buy with any one of your brand advertisers. So we know that over the long term, the challenge is going to be moving to more audience-based buying, regardless of where you are reaching that consumer. And so thinking about how you create unified deals that encompass all of those different capabilities and ultimately build the sort of infrastructure to sell off of audiences as opposed to selling off of impressions or specific numbers is the sort of core of the AOS platform, right? So bringing together linear, local, and digital all into one system and being able to sort of combine that so that your sales team can actually go to market with all of it together.
That seems like it should be simple, but it is not. Why is it so difficult to kind of streamline these multiple workflows?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things I think that make this really difficult. The first is that there's different currencies and different expectations across all of these different media types for what your sort of measurability is, what your outcome is, and how you measure your audience, right? So in digital, there's this perception that your sort of measurement can be much more precise. And especially if you are the media owner, if you have login data, you have a lot of first-party data that you actually sort of can use to sell off of with a little bit more precision than maybe you can with some of your linear measurement. So that's one of the first pieces, is that there's these different measurement and different currencies that these media types are being sold off of. The second part that's difficult about this is that the teams that are actually working on yield and ad operations and optimization, they are all sort of different folks who have come from different backgrounds and have spent time with these different media types. And they've got different workflows necessarily because the delivery is different and because the sort of nature of that specific media type is different from one another, right? So we see that with the way that you have to manage spots in linear versus how you manage different kind of positions on a digital site, as an example, right? And so one of the things that Operative is working on is sort of by bringing all of those different flows for all those different media types into one system, what we can actually do is start to look at the commonalities more so than any other company in our space, because we do work with national linear, local linear, and digital publishers and companies that span across all of those different media types. We actually can start to see with those companies the similarities between those different workflows and identify ways that we can start to make them more streamlined over time. And also, because they're living in one system, it makes it easier for those users to adapt to each other's practices over time as linear and digital start to become closer together.
So you talked about different workflows and different mindsets. One of the biggest differences in the media sales space is sort of selling programmatically versus not. We've seen a couple of high-profile media companies publicly say they're moving away from programmatic. Is that what you're seeing, and is that what you're sort of setting up the platform to do?
Well, at Operative, we want our AOS platform and any of the tools that we have in our portfolio to be able to really focus on revenue maximization for the content owner or distributor and the ability for them to sell the way that they want to. And so whether or not that's leaning into programmatic or leaning away from programmatic, we want to help our publishers maximize every dollar that they can get from any one of their sort of pieces of content or modes of distribution, right? So for us, I think we are seeing that a lot of publishers want to be able to go direct to their brands and their agencies without having to go through some of these programmatic pipes. And I think that part of that is driven by the fact that the programmatic tax is relatively high still, right? When you think about the way that all of these companies that add value in the chain sort of participate, they do take sort of the value that they bring to the table out of that transaction. And so we are seeing publishers who are interested in self-serve, and because we are an open platform and because we focus on being able to integrate with any different company that our partners and our clients would want to be able to integrate with across delivery, audience measurement, audience extension capabilities, and into sort of the buy side for RFP automation or even for self-service. We are focused on sort of bringing those capabilities to bear for our clients.
That sounds a lot like one of the other industry buzzwords, which is interoperability. Can you talk a little bit more about Operative's commitment to that? Because particularly from a data standpoint, you mentioned first-party data, among other things. That is a huge part of how media companies need to operate moving forward.
Yeah. So the way that I think about this is that Operative is the only company in our space who really operates at the scale required for major media companies to run their businesses with the complexity that they have. And part of being able to support companies at scale is the ability to be a solution that you can rely on, even as you need to shift the parts around the OMS or the sort of revenue engine out as your business changes and evolves, right? So as a digital publisher, you might decide that you need to make an ad server change. And our commitment is that we will be integrated with every major ad server for AOS for the delivery engine. The same thing is true for traffic on the linear side. We want open and API-based back and forth connections with all of the delivery engines that are on the market, ourselves included, as a part of that delivery engine set. Same thing for audience measurement. We want to be able to plug in any measurement currency that you as a seller would need to be able to use to sell into our ecosystem. And so our commitment is that we are sort of integrating all of these different capabilities. We're laying the foundation for plugging any partner in to our AOS platform. We have a series of kind of first integrators who we're using as who are helping us sort of build out those initial connections. Freewheel and GAM on the ad server side is an example of that. But what we really want to be, we're designing all of those capabilities so that you could insert any ad server into that mix for AOS. Same thing on the RFP side and on the self-serve capability for on the buy side as well. So our goal is to be as open and integrated as possible so that as your business shifts over time, you don't have to change your OMS as well. It sort of already works for whatever partner you want to plug in.